right, we're sticking in jug drill, folks, for the next one.
Yellow does have wonky cards.
Our Lord and Savior Reinhardt.
Hmm.
Magic is everything, as some might know. He is the Crusader Thrud Reborn, according to this title. Oh yes. So he is a 4/3 cost male tome cavalry unit. The first time we're seeing one of those. He's got 60 attack, 20 support, which is okay, I guess. Range 1 to 2. He's got 3 abilities here. His first skill, Unsilenceable Dire Thunder. Blue is auto again, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So automatically send 1 card from your hand to the retreat area. So it's, right away, that's a maintenance cost for this character. Each time this unit's attack destroys a non-main character enemy, you may pay the cost. And if you do, so which you would because it's automatic, right? So
I should say auto skills don't have to be used if there is a may in the card. So when it says you may pay the cost, you don't have to.
Oh, so as long as the stipulation is met, then it becomes...
Yes. Then,
okay.
Yeah, if you want to use this, you choose to use this effect by paying the cost.
Right, okay.
There's very few cards that actually have like a maintenance, as you said.
Okay. Okay, let me read that again then. Each time this unit's attack destroys a non-main character enemy, you may pay the cost, which is sending 1 card from your hand to the retreat area. And if you do, untap this unit. So he can effectively attack again, to my understanding, if that's the case. And it's not 1 per turn, which is another funny thing. I guess we'll get into that in a moment. Each time you untap this unit, which again is automatic, so it synchronizes with his first skill, until the end of the turn, this unit gains 20 attack. So 60 would become 80 if you just send 1 card to the retreat area. And his third skill, Veteran General, which is an activation of once per turn, flip 2 bonds if this unit has 100 or higher attack, which he would if you sent 2 cards to the retreat area. You would draw 2 cards. So, once per turn, you could pick up the 2 cards that you sent away in case you decide to untap him twice. And as long as you have cards in your hand, you can keep attacking 20, plus 20, plus 20, plus 20, plus 20. And he's going to get really powerful. And considering he's at range as well, as long as it's a non-main character enemy, like, what would survive this? Like, that's a lot of power that's going in. Obviously, you could dodge, but, like, you know, and that would just kind of end the Thunderstorm, per se. This is a funny card. This is really funny. I'm gonna say this is a really good yellow aggro card. Like, a really good yellow aggro card. And I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10 for the yellow aggro, non-once per turn Thunderstorm.
So let's talk about this card a little bit.
Yeah, let's do that.
So, everything looks fine and dandy until you read a little bit further into skill 1. Each time this unit's attack destroys a non-main character enemy. So, the big thing is that in order for this effect to resolve with Reinhardt by himself, and say there were 2 non-main character enemies on the field, you would still have to destroy those enemies and then send 2 cards to retreat in order to draw 2 cards after you flip 2 bonds face down. So you basically cycle 2 cards. Now, the big problem is that because this particular effect assumes that you have to destroy a non-main character enemy, if they evade, that basically means Reinhardt's effect does not get to resolve.
Yeah.
So there is a possibility that you untap once, you send a card to retreat, and your opponent dodges with the other card, and you basically go -1.
I'm glad I did consider the dodging when I did mention that. So that's fine. At least I saw that.
mean, the other tricky part about the card is if your opponent only has one non-main character enemy, you're kind of out of luck because you can't. You have no other way to activate his skill 1 once you kill the first one, and killing the first one might not even be that easy because he starts out at 60. There are ways to get him bigger. So, like if you use that Sigurd we mentioned to give him plus 30, then you only need to do it once, and you're swinging for 90. So that's better. But I think like there's like a few things about this card that are just awkward. If I'm remembering correctly, this card doesn't have many copies. Reinhardt doesn't have many copies.
That would
I
be
think
correct.
there's 3
Reinhardt only has
Reinhardts?
a 1 cost and a 4/3.
Oh,
Yeah,
there's
there's
2.
yeah. So that means that first of all, this card doesn't really work as a splash because he's like he doesn't work with other yellow decks very well, basically. Yellow doesn't really want to discard, and flipping 2 to draw 2 isn't also a thing that yellow decks really want. So he would have to be main character. And then the problem with that is if he's your main character, you've only got 8 copies of him, and one of them has to be your 1 cost. And then one of them also has to be this promotion. That means you're only left with 6 cards as your evades or crits, which is very low. Most MCs want to have like in the range of like 8 to 12.
Yeah.
Like total copies of their main character, I should say, in the deck.
Mhm.
Um,
That said, oh, go ahead.
no, that was it.
Oh, I was gonna say that said, you technically can use this as splash in a particular deck. There is Set 10 Azura. Set 10 Azura has a tap effect where she untaps a unit that has attacked this turn. It gives plus 30. So this at least makes the condition for Reinhardt to get to 100 attack a little bit easier.
Mm.
This means that you only discard 1 card in order to get to flip 2 and then draw 2 cards. So you
Well, you would
actually go +1.
you don't need to discard because you get plus 30 for that untap, and then you get plus 20 from skill 2.
Oh, right, correct. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
so
you
you
would
get flip 2. You get to flip 2 to draw 2 cards, basically.
yeah,
Hmm.
the main problem is like the flip 2 draw 2, it is like efficient. It's just not fitting with what most yellow decks want. That Azura deck could maybe do it, but I haven't seen much tinkering with that.
Yeah. This is just more or less just to like give an idea of things that you could technically run
Right.
this card with.
Yeah, but I'll be frank, I've never seen this card played in anything ever.
Hmm.
I've only seen it in, we'll just say, non-serious decks. If I had to give this card a personal rating, it'd probably be more like, probably more like a 4, 4.5.
Hmm.
I'd agree.
So potentially like kind of noob trappy, like, whoa, look at all the cool things it could do, but that's a trick. Could do.
Emphasis could.
Yeah,
Could.
I mean, it's basically you get avoided once, and then and then he doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I'm glad I did mention or notice that though. I did notice there's no once per turn, and I did notice what if you dodge.
Yeah,
Same magic as everything, but it's not everything here.
Yeah, I guess not. Reinhardt, unfortunately, I'm wrong about you, my friend. I'm sorry. And I'll be warp skipping you on this review as well as how I did in Thracia. Right. Well, that was an interesting card. That was an interesting card. The Crusader Thrud Reborn, and off he goes. All right. Next, folks, is our first green card of the of this analysis. And right away when I saw the stat line on this, I went, "What the hell is this?" We have King Canigas himself. All right. So he is a male beast cavalry unit. He costs 6, and this is the only Canigas in the game, so he's just a flat 6 right away. 100 base attack, 10 support. He's got a green is what again? I know I ask every time.
Tellius. Oh, sorry, for the skill, that's continuous.
Continuous, okay. So the continuous cost, deployment cost of all medallion cards, so green, all green cards in your hand are reduced by 1. However, the deployment cost cannot be reduced below 1. And that's his only skill. So he is a pure stat stick that reduces the costs of all green units in your hand by 1, but cannot be going lower than 1. Now, I know that green units like to kind of class change, or not class change, but like stack on themselves. I feel like maybe 6 is a pretty steep cost for this, though. Like, I could see it being kind of silly with like other copies of Canigas on the field, but I know you can't do that. I'm gonna say that this is probably too slow and too cumbersome of a card, especially in green. That's my final analysis.
What? Give us a number.
5, maybe? I don't know too much about how green might work, but maybe I'd say 5 out of 10 on a score of cumbersome.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. I think this card doesn't see play. It's like you said, it's just too expensive, and its effect is very okay. Usually, by the time you can play this card, you can play other cards that are of like a high cost, like just fine as well. And reducing those high cost cards by 1 won't be that impactful. You could maybe run it in like one particular deck, but it I don't see it working very well even in that. It is a very funny big number, though. I will give it that.
Yeah. What do you think, Colonel?
Big number, funny, but yeah, basically what Basil said.
Yeah.
The particular deck is pretty much the only one I can think of too, and even then, I'd have to like really sit and scratch my head as far as like to why to play it.
Yeah,
To say it's a 5 out of 10, I think is too generous. I'd give this card like I don't know, maybe a 2 to 3 on a good day. It's just too slow. Basically, card's too slow.
the other problem is that like green just has better cards for this cost that do like way more. Like they may not be as big, but they put on more pressure. And are just
Yeah,
better, or just have like a good effect.
For 6 cost, I definitely think I got that on the ball though. Like for 6 cost, just to reduce costs by 1, like you have a massive stat stick, sure, but like for 6,
Yeah.
And then like even if you pull him as a support, like that's kind of a garnet right there. That's just like he's not going to be doing nothing as a support.
Mm-hmm. There's one last thing to note, and that's basically the wording of this card, which also means that class changing still has the same cost. So that's another thing that
exactly. Yeah. Because it's just flat deployment. You still have to class change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if you're trying to stack stuff, or even if you're class changing, like it doesn't help you.
That Tormod is still costing you 4 bonds, sir.
And it's limited to green, which I guess makes sense for his color, but still.
Yeah.
If it was like all units or all cards, what would you think, gentlemen, if it was all cards?
Even if it was all cards, I don't think I'd run it.
No, I wouldn't.
I think 6 is way too slow for such a minor effect.
Like, the funny thing is, you said if it worked for other cards or other colors. I don't know what other colors I would want, because the big expensive cards I would want to play are green.
Pretty much. A lot of cards don't usually go beyond 5 costs in most games. There are some exceptions. Green is the big one, so that's a big reason why.
Yeah, some colors don't even have 6 or higher costs.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, well,
black and white would be another, but yeah, I'd rather not give that color, like deployment cost -1.
Well, that's I think we're all in agreement on this one, gentlemen. Or would you say so?
Yeah, I think your score was too generous, but you don't know how green works, so that was fair.
I mean, even in like my knowledge of like Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic or anything, 6 is still heavy. Like,
Yeah.
especially in a game like this, like that's 6 bonds. Like the game might even be over by then.
Yeah, it's basically you're basically dealing like almost like with 12-star unit or however it is in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, or I'm thinking, you know what? This game compares a lot to Hearthstone and kind of that, like Hearthstone plus Magic, I think. So
Mhm.
Sure.
I think anyway, but like 6 mana, let's say in Hearthstone, that's like, ugh. Like I feel like if they released this card in Hearthstone, it would be a 6 mana with like, to make it good, it would have to be like a 3 mana with like 4 overload for Shaman or something. Like,
Yeah,
like,
that would sounds about right.
ugh.
Yeah. The big problem with this card is it's a 6 mana and he doesn't do anything on the turn.
Yeah, it does nothing else. He has to be, and he has to be on the field.
Yeah. So by the time it's your next deployment phase, he could just die,
Yeah, and you could lose the game. Yeah,
or you could die.
yeah, yeah. Well, King Canigas, thank you for your time. Moving on, gentlemen. All right, now we have, I believe this is a Nor card. I think the first of our list as well. We have Ninjalius. Not to be confused with Ninjoran. Unfortunately, she's not here or in the game. She is a female cavalry tome, 4 cost, with 60 attack, 20 support. So her auto is at the start of your turn, you may pay the cost, which in this case is flipping 2 bonds, destroy an orb. So this is better be a goddamn good effect. At the start of your turn, you may pay the cost, and if you do, choose 2 non-Elise cards from your retreat area and add them to your hand. Okay, so that's pretty strong. Or it can be, anyway. And her class change, I believe, right? CCS, class change?
Yeah. So class change. That's a class change skill. It's only active if the card is class changed.
Changed into or from?
Into the cards underneath your class change or your top unit don't matter.
Okay.
This card just needs to be on top.
Okay, so when this card becomes on top, basically, so once it's class changed into, activate once per turn, send 1 Elise from your hand to the retreat area. If you have no orbs, so basically 1 hit left and you die, add the topmost card of your deck to your orbs. Oh, man. Yeah, this is a strange one. So the first effect is pretty powerful, and because the reason is like you would run this in a deck where you're not running Elise main character, because you could just bring back 2 cards of main character and bring them back to your hand. Is that correct? Can you just do that, I guess?
Yeah, you can choose 2 of the same card.
Right. So that you can bring back 2 potential dodges for your main character at the cost of an orb and 2 bonds, which is steep, but it's kind of like a decent stall, I guess. And then class changing into this, once per turn, you can send 1 Elise from your hand. If you have no orbs, which I guess you can kind of combo with your first skill, add the topmost card of your deck to your orbs. Now, I know when you class change, you draw a card. So you're drawing 1, and then adding the topmost card of your deck to your orb pile, which gives you effectively another health point. I'm going to say this is a good card, but maybe not great. I'm going to go with like a 7.5. I think. I'm really hesitant on that, though. What do you think, gentlemen?
Colonel, you take point on this one. You've got more experience than me for sure.
Sure. Okay, so how about this? Before we discuss the score a bit, let's talk a little bit about how Elise works. So you're kind of right. You can splash Elise. That actually is viable strategy in some of the decks. However, usually how most people play her is as main character. So the thing is that when you flip 2 and destroy one of your orbs, and you add 2 of those non-Elise cards from your retreat area to your hand, you also get to draw for the turn too. So you basically get 4 cards at the start of the turn. That's pretty big. And with the second skill, synergizes with the first skill. Because more often than not, you want to make sure that you stay at that one orb so that you can flip 2 bonds and then destroy that orb in order to get 2 new cards. Well, technically 4 because you get the orb as well. And then the draw. But it is a rather steep cost in a way because you're technically throwing away one of your evades and hoping that you don't get hit. So, going a bit further into that, this is basically what you would consider a stall card. Um, the cost too is a little bit steep, but what you gain out of it is tremendous, and it allows Elise to be one of those few decks that can splash multiple colors with rather devastating effects if you can combo it right. Um, I won't go too much into details as far as like what Elise can run, but I would say in the general ballpark of your score, I'd say it's actually accurate. The biggest problem is that Elise has to stabilize, and
Mhm.
sometimes that just isn't possible against some decks. So, and there are some decks that she does technically struggle a little bit more against than others.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen or played with this card very much, but from what I've seen and experienced and heard other people say, um, it if you can get to the point where you have at least one orb, you have like a decent sized hand, and you have like you've stabilized, you're like good. This is like one of the best control decks in the game.
Yeah, I was actually
Because
about to confirm on that. Like, if you're in a good spot, this is probably okay, but
Yeah, because the important thing is the destruction of the orbs and adding 2 cards from your retreat area to your hand. That happens before you bond and before you deploy, because it's at the start of your turn.
mhm.
So that means you can um, like make sure you can get like 2 combo pieces at the same time from your retreat area, and then if your opponent, you play those cards, you play your combo, and then if your opponent kills them, well, next turn you get to get them back again for the same price. So it's a like really good loop of you get your combo pieces, you add your orb back, and then you play your cards and do your combo, and then your opponent either kills them or they don't. If they kill them, you just get it back and you can do it again. If they don't kill it, you can grab something else and do something else and further your game plan. Um, it, it's like a very good loop. It's just very susceptible to dying
Yeah,
because you destroy your own orbs.
which is
Yeah,
pretty heavy on its own.
you basically are playing a bit on the danger zone. However, there was a card that was released in set 22 that synergizes very, very well with this card, basically because of your orb count.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess I'll just say that much, and I won't say much more beyond that. But yeah, other than that, I think Basil pretty much covered everything else.
Nice. Okay, so in general agreements. Okay, I'm doing so far, I think, with this. I'm doing
Yeah,
all right so far, I think.
yeah. Oh, also, I will say it's definitely not very as popular in the states or just with our server in general, but it's much more prevalent in Japan. Um,
Really?
this is like one of their preferred control decks.
Huh.
This
And
deck
it's
is not easy.
yeah, it is a very difficult deck to play, and not
It's a
many
big
people here.
brain Japanese deck, I see.
Yeah, pretty much.
Us here in North America, we're not capable of handling this card. I get it.
We can't read.
We can't read, yeah. we're not suited for Ninjalius.
We are not.
We're not
We
worthy.
are unworthy.
Yeah. All right. Ah, yes. The next card always this is a fun one. Now, this one we've actually discussed in the Cipher chat a little bit, and I think I don't remember who it was who confirmed that my suspicions and my hunches about this card was correct. So I'm just gonna let you two go over this one really quick, but I think we all know how this one's gonna be. It's Mask Changeover.
Oh, I've never seen this card before.
Yeah. So
Even I've heard about this one.
yeah, this card. Okay, they made this card in set 7, and it's pretty good. So skill 1 is a special skill. You flip a white bond, and when an allied Oboro on the board is moved, you can flip that bond and stack this card from your retreat area on top of that Oboro to class change. And class changing in this game also draws a card. So if you have this card in your retreat and you have an Oboro on the board, the Oboro moves, you flip a bond, and this goes on top of that Oboro, and you draw a card. Her skill 2 lets you send the topmost card, which would just be this card, of this unit stack to your retreat area. So that just lets you kind of reset and do skill 1 again later. And then third skill is just a bonus. If you have a bow ally, you get plus 10 attack.
Yeah, just free stats, yeah.
Yeah. So this card was pretty good. And maybe it wasn't like meta defining, but if you can move your Oboro a few times, you get like good efficient draws, and you get to be 80 attack. So that's good. The the funny part is that this card existed, and then they made another Oboro, a 1 cost, that as a free, like it has a skill that is just move this unit, as long as she is untapped. So she can basically move herself for free. And there's a funny mechanic in Cipher regarding class changing. So when you class change into a unit, the unit underneath basically doesn't exist anymore. And the card on top is like your card that exists now. So what this means for Oboro is you use the skill to move the 1 cost Oboro while she's untapped, and then you flip 1 and put this card on top, draw a card. Very cool. You have moved and drawn a card. Very cool. But because the 1 cost has gone away, you can then remove this card from the top, and you have suddenly a brand new 1 cost that didn't exist before and hasn't used that move skill yet. So you can do it again, because it is treated as a new unit on the board. So then you can move again back to the place you were, flip 1, class change again, draw a card. And what that basically does is it's basically the hyper efficient draw. It's just for 1 bond you draw a card, and if you do it an even number of times, you just end up in the same spot you were. So you flip 2 and draw 2, and you're an 80 base. So you basically just have 80 attack, because you usually have bow units in the Oboro deck.
Yeah, the big thing is that when you class change, the once per turn effect doesn't necessarily mean once per turn. So what I mean by this is, let's say for a moment that we just had this Oboro 4/3, and we just had let's say we had the Oboro 1 and the Oboro 4/3. And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that I stacked another Oboro 4/3 through, we'll just say like XL Crop. Now, the thing is that whole once per turn is changed ever so slightly because there's a new card on top. And that's part of the reason why this particular skill can be used over and over again, with Glamour's Quick Changing Princess, and then, of course, the 1 cost being able to move once per turn. Being really efficient in bond spending, as far as being a 1-for-1, is pretty nice, and it allows you to draw for more crits or just to extend your plays. Long story short, card's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's for context, viewers in the future. I did just ask, or not really ask about it, but I suppose pondered about like what makes this card so good, and it was involving the combo with the other Oboro card that is just, it's constant drawing as well as recycling itself, and it's loads of free advantage. And I think both Basil and Colonel definitely summed it up. It's a good card. I'm definitely agreeing with that, and we did previously discuss this one. This one I did throw in here just to hear you two kind of go about it, because You know, it's
One more thing.
yeah.
The cool thing about skill 1 is most decks, like if this is your main character, most decks want their promotion for their main character in their hand. Um, and you would pay however many bonds to class change into it on the turn you can. But for a Boro, you don't have to do that. So what you can do is, if this card is in your hand, you can instead use it as an evade or a critical hit, and then oops, it's in your retreat. Now on your next turn, you're able to move a Boro and then class change into it during your act phase. So that means you can spend those bonds playing more units to hit your opponent with.
Yeah. Basically, you could pretend and say this card is like a 4/2, except you don't have to stack it from hand. You could still
And
deploy a 2 cost or 2/1 costs alongside her.
yeah, or if you don't draw it, you could also just end up supporting it, and then it's in your retreat area, and then you're good.
Yeah.
So it's just very consistent, very good for aggression, and you get to draw cards. And also, it synergizes with other white cards as well.
Very strong card, and I think we all agree on that. Most of the community, I sure would agree with it. I'm quite confident on.
This is 10 out of 10 card.
Yeah.
By far, like one of the best cards to ever come out.
Yeah, this is considered like number 2 deck in the game in our community.
Especially with the Obro that came out later in the game's life cycle.
Well, yeah, that's when it got that.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Beforehand, it was okay.
Yeah. The thing that made it trickier beforehand, I'll explain this real quick, is that you had to do things like tap flyers in order to basically force the class change without doing things like tap moving her forward. So it was a little clunkier to do the more efficient method that we're known for today.
Right. Yeah, because I guess back then, around when the time this card was released in Booster 7, the combo wasn't quite there. But a lot of card games have that, It's like a lot of, eventually some card will come out that just makes an older card, like, ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just because of the way the class changing and skill reset works. It might not have even been intended, but here we are.
Yeah, well, here we are indeed. Right, well, let's move on to the next one. Okay, we have another white card here. We have Ryoma, Prince born of White Dragon Blood. There's the title for you. Yeah, the Lobster Prince himself. He's a 70 attack male sword fighter with 10 support. He's a 4/3. He's got a dragon vein? Dragon blood, is it?
Yeah, Dragon Blood.
Yeah. Lightning Taming Sword. Yes, it is it's an activatable at the cost of 1 bond flip. Until the end of this turn, this unit acquires range 1 to 2, so fine, fair enough. Resonance of Dragonblood. Now that's a Dragonblood skill. Now, automatically, the green skill here, this unit acquires all Dragon Blood possessed by other allies. However, he may only have 1 skill among those with shared skill names. So he gets the effects of other characters with Dragon Blood abilities, which is pretty powerful, potentially. Especially with the combos, I suppose. And Echoing Thunderclap, it's a pretty cool ability name. Once per turn, flip a bond and tap 2 white allies. Untap this unit. Okay, I'm gonna say right away, this is a strong card, like a 9 out of 10, because being able to flip over a bond and then tapping 2 whites, which is not a terrible steep cost, but being able to combo this with other Dragon Vein, Dragon Blood characters, which probably have some nutty effects as well, like, stacking all of those effects is like, that potentially really strong. And the ability to potentially do it again, yeah, I'm going to say this is a 9 out of 10 card.
Wait, could you repeat that rating real quick? Sorry.
9? Question mark?
I see.
what was the mute for?
Oh, I just didn't hear it at first, that's why.
Oh, okay.
That was some serious sarcasm sounding right there.
No. It wasn't sarcasm. I promise.
Okay, all right.
I was genuine. I didn't hear it. I thought I heard 9, but I didn't really know if I heard 9, so I wanted to make sure.
Okay, yeah. I guess
Anyway, sorry. I'll be quiet now.
That was the most
Well-
like. You wanna run by me again 9 and just like starts laughing in the background. Yeah, I'm gonna go with 9. That's I think.
So the Dragon Blood is unfortunately not very good. The skills that you get for it are pretty tame, and usually they're on like pretty like hefty units. So like either 4/3s, there's some 3/2s, or some 5/4s. So you usually can only play like one per turn, and you have like assuming you have one on the board. Like say this is your main character, you could probably only play one per turn. There are like you can potentially cheat some others out, but for the most part you'll be getting like one, maybe two per turn. And unfortunately the skills just aren't very good. Like one of them is like you get +10 during your turn. Another one is you get +10 during your opponent's turn. Like they're okay, but that's like one, and it also takes up 2 of their skill slots. So like skill 1 is like a pretty mediocre skill by default because it has to be shared with other units, and then skill 2 has to be that it gets the mediocre skills of other units. So unfortunately the skills just don't compound in a very good way to make it worth running these as a deck. Is at least how I see the Dragon Blood deck. There are some worthwhile skills, like on hit you get to flip and draw a card, or during your turn the +10 is pretty good, but you won't really get enough on the board at once to be like you would think if you got all of them on the board at once it would be good, or like really really strong, but it's just okay. Like the white just has better cards and better things it can do.
Yeah.
Like there's especially Ryoma. Ryoma has a crazy card, but this isn't it. You would rather be playing a much different copy of Ryoma.
And it's not like there's only like a few Ryomas. I'm sure there's at least like 6 Ryomas out there.
Yeah, there are quite a few.
Yeah. What do you got, Colonel?
I was crunching the numbers and I realized something really funny.
Yeah.
Did you know you could flip one and tap Ryoma to untap him?
That is true. He can tap himself. It does say only to white allies. He is a white ally.
Yeah.
That's probably the one thing that stood out to me on this card. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, kind of like what Basil said. So Dragon Blood was kind of like a mechanic that they were trying to do throughout a couple of the sets. Set 14 was a big one for white. Set 15 was a big one for black. So the problem with DB skills is that sometimes the effects shared aren't terrible, but they're usually very mediocre. So the thing is like you get 1 to 2 range out of this one. This actually can work situationally with stuff like core and mail, which is usually if you're doing DB, you do it with this. Though I suppose you could do it with Kana mail. It's just everything else about the card is really, really questionable on why you would use it.
Right.
Untapping sounds cool until you realize that you need 2 other white allies and to flip a bond in order to untap them to strike twice. That's a pretty steep cost, especially when you consider that you may not always have 2 other white allies. Now with DB Corrin, that is possible because it also has a skill that basically deploys a 3 cost or lower. So you could tap the DB Corrin and you could tap the ally that you summoned, so long as it's a white ally, and untap the unit, which I think that's all DB can summon anyway. So you can have Ryoma strike twice, which is okay, but the cost is way too much.
So I guess this would have been a lot better if the Dragon Blood effects were much better.
Yeah. Most DB.
Yeah, they would have to be substantially better.
Mm-hmm.
I see. Okay. So that 9 was a bit too generous then.
This is like a 3 card.
Oh.
Yeah, this is like a 3. I'll give it a 3.1 just because the echoing thunderclap effect is funny because he can tap himself in order to untap himself.
Yeah, this card you don't even run in DB decks, I'm gonna be real.
Yeah.
Well, that was an interesting one. Definitely misleading. It's definitely that. Had I known about other Dragon Bloods, maybe I would have graded it differently.
Yeah, I agree. DB sounds really cool on paper until you kind of start looking at a lot of the DB effects and you're like, this stuff's kind of mid.
Yeah, I guess if it's a lot of like middling effects, then you get, even if you are able to absorb like other DB effects, then like you better hope they're good effects. If they're just
the
like
problem is that it's
mediocre,
like-
then like
Yeah, it's just like that's all they do, like a
Right.
lot of the time. Like, skill 3, as we said, is not very good. So all you have is the dragon blood stuff. And as we also said, it's very not amazing. So
And I guess like overall, even with his other 2 effects, it's not doing all that much. And it's a pretty hefty cost for everything, all things considered, I guess.
yeah, flip 1 for range is pretty, like, that's pretty bad. If you're doing that for a skill, you really need to kill something in the back lane.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Alright, well, I think this is one of the first ones that I've been like very wrong on. Well,
Yeah, you sounded pretty excited about it.
Like-
You sounded so sure.
because it reminded me of this one card in Yu-Gi-Oh! And that like being able to, I think it's Independent Nightingale Leerlisk, if I'm not mistaken. That Yu-Gi-Oh! Players would know this. I don't know too much about it, but I know like it can combo with like another card, and then that combo got that other card banned because it just sucks something up from the graveyard and just causes you to just like win basically. So
Can't say I'm familiar.
yeah, I wish I could elaborate more on it, but I know that that card got another one banned because of that combo piece. So I guess maybe I just like tunnel visioned on. Oh wow, you can use other effects. Yeah, broken. Like no. Oh well, moving on. All right, let's get maybe 2 more cards in here, and we'll call that a session. All right, next we have a purple card. Potentially some people's favorites. Some people's favorite chicken dragon themselves, Faye. So it's a 3-cost female stone user, dragon stone user, and dragon. 50 attack, 20 support. I'm not too sure if dragons have like any unique mechanics to them, or dragon stone users or anything, but maybe someone wants to elaborate on that really quickly.
Most of the time it's negative.
It's negative.
It's not that bad, but basically, like there's some things that the attribute does work against you on, but that can be said for a lot of attributes.
Yeah, so like typically Dragonstone units get more attack as you get more bonds, but as a downside, they get hit extra hard by units with anti-dragon skills.
Right.
So Crom has Falchion, and that'll deal extra damage to dragon units.
Yeah. All right. So what do we got? What's the first ability here called, or a skill called the Eternal Child? Eternal rather. Once per turn, choose one of your bonds and place it on top of your deck. Okay, so right away there's the again the kind of the support tinkering, I guess. And you would know what card is at the top of your deck as well, so that's, even if you don't do a support, you just know what's on top of your deck, so that's pretty powerful as it is. And Pure-Blooded Divine Dragon, if you have 6 or more bond cards, this unit gains 30 attack, making it an 80 attack with 6 or more bonds, which I guess is like kind of mid to late game, isn't it? Because 6 bonds, that's already a lot, isn't it?
It is.
I think this is like a decent card. Like being able to choose one card to put on top of your deck for support usage or for drawing outright is pretty powerful as it is. Even if you don't manage to deal with the second plus 30 attack, just freely once per turn choosing a card to recycle from the bonds is like, you're losing a resource, but you know you can specifically tinker with your deck with a resource you know you would want to use. So it can be a hit and miss, but it's a pretty good effect nonetheless. I just don't know if it's worth losing a bond over. I guess it can be, right? Because there's so many like wacky combos you could do. Again, thinking back to Canas, right? So I'm gonna say this is a good card, potentially not great. I'm gonna go maybe like 7.5 ish. I think. I hope I'm right.
Yeah. So the thing about this card is, it has some inherent anti-synergy, because you want to be at 6 bonds to get the plus 30, and then you remove a bond for the first skill. That's like not that big of a deal sometimes. Like, you know, sometimes you like don't care because you're at like 7 bonds. It is a bit late into the game. That's like, you know, that's in like the mid to late game range, when you're at 6 bonds. Well, normally, there are ways to ramp, and purple has some of the better ways to ramp. So it could still be like, you know, fairly early in the game. Not early, but like it could still be like solid mid game by the time you're at 6 or 7 bonds. So the problem is that it's just kind of outclassed in terms of stacking. Like Canas you have to flip a bond for, but you get much better flexibility because you can use all of your retreat. And typically for bonds, the nice thing is you can choose a face down bond. So like you can use a bond you've already spent, and put it on top of your deck.
Yeah.
And that's like something, at least you've like already used that bond, you can put it on top of your deck and get some more use out of it. There is just kind of a better card than this though, where you get to put that bond into your hand instead of on top of your deck.
Is it a done?
Was that?
Is it a done?
No.
Okay.
It's a Myr.
Oh.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, you'd rather just use other stackers, and you'd rather just get the card into your hand instead, is the long and short of it.
Right. Because like if it's
So,
on
like,
top of your deck, you still have to draw it or still use it as a support.
yeah, and you might want to use it as a support, but what instead you could get the card into your hand and then use a more efficient stacker to put it on top of your deck.
Right.
So it is kind of like a shortcut for that, but usually you get more value doing it the other way.
Okay.
So it's just kind of outclassed.
I think I was on the right mark with that.
So let's delve a little bit of history on this.
I like history, Colonel. What do we got from the days of Booster 5?
So Booster 5 actually was the first time that purple was introduced. So that you can
Oh.
kind of see a little bit of what they were trying to do with this card. Because they were like, well, purple usually wants to stack cards on top. So that's kind of what this fade does. And it's okay, but like Basil said, it has a little bit of anti-synergy. You're also talking about a time where the only way that you could ramp was just with Fade 1s as well. Myr just existing is really like this card's biggest issue too. Having it in hand is a lot better because you could also use set 22 Roy, or even if you wanted to way back in the day, you could use Joshua in order to stack the card. So you could get value out of that. Again, you definitely want to pull face down bonds if you can. But the thing is that you don't always want the card technically stacked on top. Sometimes you would rather have that card in hand. Take Zephyr, for example. You don't really want that card stacked on top. You'd rather have it in hand. So Myrs is better for that reason. This card saw use on occasion, if I recall, in purple decks, but uh, at least in modern day, it's not very good.
So definitely it's A, been power crept, and B, there's been better options even probably back then.
Maybe not better options, but you didn't really even need it back then.
Right.
Like, it was okay, but
Okay.
yeah, it's just like anti-synergy, a little clunky, and then once Mer came out, this card was like dead in the water.
Right.
To be clear, Myr technically has a little bit of anti-synergy too.
That is true.
The thing that's nice about these two cards is that you don't to use skill 1 while it's on the field. There is a Myr, or sorry, not Myr. There's a Noe for blue that is a 3 cost, and the thing is that you always have to pull a bond at the end of the turn. Whereas in this case with these cards, it's optional.
Well, I guess like being able to select one outright is still fine, but yeah, I can see the clunk in it.
Yeah, nowadays this is probably like a 2 out of 10 card.
Right. Because it just
I
probably
don't know.
just doesn't do enough.
Yeah. And even back
Yeah.
then, it's kind of questionable. I don't know if later sets used this card. It may have, but I think once Myr was out, they probably just swapped to Myr.
Yeah, because especially since Myr is in the same color.
Yep.
Same color, same stats.
Yeah.
It has the same skill too.
Mhm. It's a
The
skill
only
one that's
difference,
different.
yeah, it's literally just the skill one, and instead of on top of deck, it's in hand, and that just makes it way better.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Because you can at least play it right away. You don't have to worry about drawing it again.
That
Right.
said, this card does have funny synergy with stuff like older Ellie would, so there is that.
Well, yeah, but that's all stackers.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, let's get one more card in here, folks. And oh, good. Now this one was suggested to me. I thought I didn't even know this was a card, and then I looked at every card basically, or every character. We have from green. I think this was one of your picks, Basil. Medallion.
Yeah, I think I did. I think I did choose this one.
I don't even know where to begin with this. So it's a 5 cost, class nothing, 0 attack, but it still supports with 20, which is okay, I suppose. It's got no affinities. It's just a green unit with a whole bunch of nothing on it. Right. Forbidden Divine Relic of Sealing. At the cost of flipping a bond, reveal the bottommost card of your deck and either deploy it or stack it beneath this unit. If the stacked card has the same unit name as your main character, destroy all allies. And Pulse of Release is an automatic. At the end of your turn, choose up to 2 cards stacked beneath this unit and add them to your hand, and then send this unit to the retreat area. Ugh. God. I don't know what to think about this. Like, 5 cost for flipping a bond to reveal the bottommost card of the deck, and either deploy it, which is nice, I suppose. Like that's it's not necessarily a free deployment. I mean, you're paying 5 to get this card out, and you still gotta flip a bond to get an extra play, I guess, at the cost of almost 6 in a way. And then stacking it beneath, which is fine, because that would synergize with the second effect. And if it happens to have the same unit name as your main character, all allies are destroyed, which is a really bad downside. I feel like there's reason to do that though, because it gives you the option to stack it beneath the unit. So if, like, let's say main character is Ike, let's just say, and you pull an Ike and you want to put it below, all allies would be destroyed. Save for this, wouldn't it?
So this is a wording thing. You cannot deploy an extra copy of your main character. So you have to stack it
Oh,
underneath
right,
if you
right,
deploy
right.
your main character.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. That's right. I feel like, is there a reason why you would want to do that? Maybe there's some card that want to be destroyed or something.
I mean, in a general sense, no.
No?
You don't want, yeah. We can just say you destroying all allies is bad. You do not want that.
Yeah, that sounds really bad. Like, okay, if this is a game where like the retreat area is not so much of a second hand, that's terrible. At the end of your turn, choose up to 2 cards stacked beneath this unit. Add them to your hand. Send this unit to the retreat area. End of your turn. So automatically, once there's up to 2, I guess because it's not once per turn, so you could keep flipping bonds over. And so the cost of 5 and then X amount of bonds, you can just keep getting the bottom of your deck stacked under. And then you would get up to 2 of those added to your hand from the bottom of your deck at the cost of 5 and 2 bonds, with the risk of blowing up your allies.
You can also deploy the units.
You can also deploy them as well, yeah.
So reveal the bottommost card of your deck and either deploy it or stack it beneath this unit. So what that usually equates to is you flip a bond, you show a unit, and you deploy it. And unless it's a unit you already have on the board, then you stack it. So it's a flip 1, deploy 1 from the bottom of your deck. And then if it's already on the board, then you can add it to your hand at the end of the turn.
Keep in mind that the unit that is deployed does not have to be color locked. Any card could technically be deployed so long as the card does not have an effect that says it cannot be deployed by the effects of skills. Nemesis 7 is a good example of this.
Yeah, so there are no restrictions on the deployment with this card itself, other than the card existing on the board already.
So you can keep deploying and then eventually stack 2 and then just add those 2 to your hand and then have a bunch of deployed cards at the cost of technically 1 bond, but not being color locked.
As long as you don't blow up.
Well,
As long
it's
as you don't
one
blow up,
flip
yeah.
per deploy. It's 1 flip per deploy.
Yeah.
For each reveal, I should say.
Yeah. As long as you don't blow up. So it's definitely a gamble card because like as long as you have bonds to spend, you're gonna be tempted to just keep going. You can have a bunch of cards in your hand, well, 2, and you can just keep on deploying, keep deploying until you pull that main character and you go oops, and now you blew everything up. Oh, this is so tough. I don't know. I feel like this card is far too gimmicky to like see good use in green, especially when green likes to focus with stacking. I don't know. I feel like this is a bad card. I feel it's far too gimmicky to see any form of competitive use. Casual use, probably. But even in casual use, it's like, this is just far too gimmicky to see good usage, I think. Maybe like a 2 out of 10 for like competitive nature, but like 5 out of 10 for fun. 5 or 6 out of fun.
Nah, this card's 10 out of 10 for fun factor.
You might be right. Yeah, I mean,
this is a very fun card.
Yeah. Okay. So let me try to persuade you to show that this card isn't as terrible as it looks. Okay. So the threat of blowing your MC is pretty stable. However, there are cards that came out with this particular set in set 20 and also a card in set 22 that allows you to stack to the bottom of the deck. You have Ashunera, which allows you to reveal 4 of your top cards, and you can choose one of those cards and stack it to the bottom. The other thing that's nice is that there's Leiron, and so long as Medallion is on the field, Leiron can choose a card from the retreat and put it to the bottom of the deck. So there are ways that you can kind of rig your Medallion. But what if I told you there's an MC that plays this Medallion for free?
Something Micaiah?
No. Try again.
God. What character would play this free? You already mentioned Laren. You already mentioned Ashanera. Micaiah's on the card, but it's not Micaiah. I doubt it's a Yoon MC, is it?
Nope.
Is Yoon MC a thing?
No.
Okay.
I mean, there is a one-cost unit, but no.
Oh, good.
What if I told you it's Ashnard?
That was my next guess. That was actually going to be my next guess because it makes sense because that's what Ashnard wanted.
Now, let me tell you what makes this even funnier. What
Yeah.
if I told you Ashnard wants you to flip all those bonds face down?
Mm-hmm.
To basically satisfy the gimmick.
Right.
Or, are you ready for this?
Uh-huh.
You can untap if all your bonds are face down.
Which I assume Ashnard has a very powerful effect. Is this like the top level Ashnard? Like super mega corrupt, insane Ashnard?
It is.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
So
he is a 6-cost. Like he is a 6/5.
And I'm gonna
Mhm.
throw this
Like-
out here. Ashnard's one of my boys. He's one of my favorite characters in Telios.
Well, then you would love this
I
card.
probably would, because I was thinking about getting one of the Ashnard cards to own, and I just wasn't sure which one I wanted to commit to.
So I guess I'll just explain the combo real quick. So the Ashnard 6/5 allows you to deploy the medallion for free. And if you deploy the medallion through this skill, you get plus 20 attack. And keep in mind, Ashnard already has 80 attack, so it goes up to 100 with the medallion on the field. And this unit acquires 1 to 2 range, which is very powerful, especially since you can use it to clear board or hit MCs that are stuck at the back line. Oh, wait, did I mention that deploying this medallion is free? So it doesn't even goof you on your curve?
But does that make Medallion good, though?
Okay, so yes, in
Yes.
general. So
Question mark?
okay, so what Ashnar does, he plays the medallion.
Yeah.
Usually, you spend bonds getting Ashnar out sooner because he costs 5. That's to promote. He costs 5 to promote. Not he's a 6-cost card in
Mhm.
general. So usually, you spend bonds and get ways to get him out sooner. Mostly with Elyncia. So you want to spend some bonds prior to playing this card. What you then do, so you're in Ashnard, you play this card, you are 100, and you have like some bonds flipped already. There are a couple cards like Ashanera and Leyran who can rig the bottom of your deck, and you play cards from the bottom of your deck. And it's green, so you have some really good cards that are like pretty expensive. Like there's some good Ikes that are very strong. There's like a Kurthnaga. You could run like Mist.
Definitely Canigas.
You know you would not. But yeah, there's like a bunch, and also those cards can spend bonds as well. So what you do is you like spend as many as you like dare with Medallion, either with your safe ones or you could risk it a bit. And then all your bonds are face down, and then Ashnard can just untap for free. His skill, like if you have all face down bonds, he just gets a free untap. So like with the medallion, he is swing for 100 and with range, so he basically hits whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And he does it twice, and you get to deploy a bunch of stuff, and then if it's already on the board, you add it to your hand. It's like very strong tempo, and he's like very scary once he gets to this place. The like snag, there are like a couple snags. One is that he needs to promote at like a reasonable time because 5 is way too slow. And the other is if you don't rig the bottom of your deck, you can blow up, and it's not game losing, but it's typically really bad. So you really would prefer to rig, or if, you have a good clock on most of the copies of your Ashnards, and you can like have a reasonable guess that it isn't at the bottom of your deck.
Right.
It still could be, but you it's worth at least trying. So it has like, in theory, it has like insane potential of like deploying a bunch of high cost units, and Ashnard himself swings twice for 100, and you get extra cards, and it's like, and then in subsequent turns you get one bond, and then you just flip it on whatever, and then you can attack twice again. It's like in theory, he's very strong, a bit inconsistent, and there's like always that risk of blowing yourself up. But he, like on average, if you don't like, is quite strong in like that period of the game.
Yeah.
Also, this card makes for some interesting gimmicky side effects.
Yeah, I believe it.
Where there are people that run only one copy of their MC and only that copy. So that way the medallion doesn't blow them up.
Yeah.
The other interesting side effect is actually with a card that you wouldn't expect, Anna.
Which
Because
one?
Anna's can deploy because Anna doesn't have that issue as far as like a limit. You can technically deploy an Anna on the field, and thus it doesn't have to be stacked to the bottom of the medallion. So you could bring your Anna from 100 worlds or 1,000 worlds here.
Yeah.
Just a funny side effect.
Yeah, because you can pull Anna from it and deploy it because it says specifically if you stack it underneath, like underneath this card. So if you just don't stack it and you just deploy the Anna, then it doesn't blow up.
And all the Annas have the same shared effect where like they can deploy each other, right? Or something like
Yeah,
that.
From what I remember, yes.
They can exist on the board with other Annas.
Right, yeah. I remember reading that when I looked at the Anna cards for a moment. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, 100 worlds, not 1,000 worlds.
No, your read, it's a bit low for competitive, I think, but like you're correct in that like the risk is pretty steep.
Yeah.
And it is a very, very fun card to play.
You know what? It works specifically really well, I think, now that you mentioned Ashnard, which does make sense for lore reasons.
Mhm.
I feel like playing an Ashnard deck. Is there an Ashnard deck that you wouldn't run this in? I guess, right? Would you play Ashnard normally without this, or would you play Ashnard specifically for this?
Suppose you could play the Ashnard 4/3 as MC and not do any medallion shenanigans, but
Yeah, it's pretty.
why
It
would you
doesn't
do
do
that?
much. Yeah,
That ruins the fun.
yeah. The 6/5 is like the Ashnard deck that you run, and this is the card that makes that deck good.
So
A
context.
lot of set 20 was built around this particular card in Ashnard. Not all of it, but some of it.
What was 20 a Tellius focused booster?
It was Tellius and just black and white, I guess.
Revelations.
Yeah,
quote,
Revelations. There we go.
Ah,
Yeah.
Tellius Revelations. Okay.
We're not going to say the other word. That word doesn't exist.
Yes, the bad word.
The bad word.
It's fine. Don't worry about it.
The bad word. Interesting. So okay, so this is definitely a very casual, fun deck.
You know, honestly, like you could bring it to tournaments and do okay with it.
Really?
I wouldn't say it's a top tier deck, but it's definitely like a deck that you could scrape a few wins with it.
Yeah, I think it's like I'd give it like a 6 or like a maybe even 7.
Really?
But like it's 7 is like if you hit everything, this is like a 9.
Oh
if you
yeah, of course.
if you blow yourself up, obviously it's a 0. So like where do you put it? I don't know. You can do some breaking. I'd average it at like a 6.
There are cards that also like are really annoying for this. Lilith 2 is a pretty good example.
I guess if you have the combo pieces for it, like if you have Laren, if you run Ashanira, Ashnard, of course, Yoon might have something to do. Is there a Yoon and a Micaiah card that deals with this too somehow?
You know, honestly, it's actually
not
Mist
really.
that does. The Yoon and Micaiah don't really interact with Medallion. Mist is the other one. Mist has an effect where if you tap her and then discard a card, you can grab a Medallion.
What?
Yeah, you can just cycle or just discard a grab a medallion. It's pretty good.
Oh, Medallion's from Retreat, by the way.
Well, we can call it there, folks. Colonel Basil, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for the lovely analysis.
Yeah, this
No
is
problem.
fun.
We'll be
It
sure
was
to do
great.
this again in the future. There's many more cards to go through, of course.
I look forward to it.
But yeah, we'll definitely arrange something. And viewers in the future, thanks for watching. Colonel Basil, you two have anything you want to add before we leave?
Man, I'm just like kind of sad we didn't get like all the colors. Like we only got a handful. Like we didn't get any red, we didn't get any
Mm-hmm.
brown. So that'll be good. I will look forward to that next time.